You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we go beyond our traditional world of Apple and SPY and VIX options and all that fun stuff, and head on over to the crypto side of the fence. We're going to explore, of course, the Bitcoin options, XRP, get a little ETH, everything else that's going on under the sun in the world of crypto derivatives. So the vol, the SKEW, the volatility, the open interest, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network, reminding you out there, if you like what you hear, this show, anything we do, nearly a dozen programs on the network these days, a couple of hitting you pretty much every day out there. Keep rating and reviewing. It really does help new folks discover the network in these crazy times. Everyone could use a reliable outlet these days. We like to think we provide that, so keep rating and reviewing. The network's been around for a long time, but there's so many new people discovering these markets every day that they really need a place to turn. Of course, keep those questions and comments coming too. We do love to hear from all of you out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the program today. It is time to roll out the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the program where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And today's guest is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Igor TELYATNIKOV, the co-founder and CEO over there at ALPHAPOINT. Igor, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat.
Great to be on, Mark. Thanks for having me.
And Igor, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the options and indeed the crypto space and how you found your way to becoming the co-founder over there at ALPHAPOINT. And then also, it's been a little while since we checked in with you folks over there at ALPHAPOINT. I think it was all the way back in June of 2019. So a lot has happened since then. We, of course, have had a lot of new listeners join the program since that point. So also maybe give our audience a bit of an overview, a bit of a catch-up of what it is you folks do at ALPHAPOINT.
Happy to do so. My personal background prior to ALPHAPOINT, I was investing and advising companies in the media, finance, and healthcare space. So spent some time building some companies, helping to advise, invest. And my background prior to that was really in security. Worked for a big conglomerate, Ingersoll Rand, that then spun off into Allegion, helping large financial institutions, hospitals, school districts secure their perimeter and their facilities, both on the physical security and the cybersecurity side of things. Have had a wide variety of experiences, and just about in 2013 fell down the crypto rabbit hole through an investment in a hedge fund that was actually trading. It was a fund of funds type of strategy, and while that fund was developing its strategy, it started to trade cryptocurrency. That was still the early days. Went to some conferences, met entrepreneurs in the space, and very, very quickly realized that this space was going to revolutionize finance, and was just getting started. So jumped in with both feet and met the co-founders of ALPHAPOINT, Joe Ventura and Jack Sallin, the technical co-founders whose backgrounds was building trading platforms for futures and options connected to all the major venues, CME, BATS, NYSE, et cetera. And there was a need in the space. There was a need in the space to provide institutional grade infrastructure to launch cryptocurrency and digital asset exchanges around the world. And ALPHAPOINT came in to solve that problem. And with the technology, the experience to help our customers launch markets and provide access to digital assets globally. So our technology helped power many of the first brokerages, exchanges in various regions around the world. We've powered over 150 cryptocurrency and digital asset exchanges and brokerages and OTC desks, liquidity providers, et cetera, where they use our technology, our back-end matching engine, order management system, front-end trading tools to provide trading experiences for their customers, both retail and institutional, in their geographies.
So many of the exchanges and players that our listeners may have heard of in the crypto space, chances are they're white labeling your software there, Igor.
Many have, and some are public and some are confidential.
Well, you mentioned the technology, and indeed one of the core technologies of any exchange is the matching engine. I'm curious, from your perspective, as you were developing this over there at ALPHAPOINT, were there any unique challenges that came from creating a matching engine for crypto, or was it pretty much the same as it might be in just about any other marketplace you're going to venture into?
So yeah, we always focused on scale, and we even early on were thinking about how to prepare for algorithmic traders, quantitative traders, and providing new types of APIs that they're more comfortable with. We were some of the first that provided WebSocket connectivity as well as fixed connectivity, which is standard in capital markets, but quite new for many of the traders that were early in the crypto space that were relying on web interfaces such as REST. The actual matching engine, the matching engine we built was very robust, can process nearly 1 million transactions a second, and was built by the same team that built the matching engine at NYSE. So there are many similarities, and really the matching process is the same when you're talking about centralized exchanges. The uniqueness within the crypto markets, I think, is more so on the mass retail type of approach versus in capital markets. You have member brokers that are, the actual participants on the exchange actually connecting to that matching engine and then are managing their millions of customers downstream. So that's probably the biggest challenge that's different than within capital markets in the crypto space is this direct to consumer, direct to retail type of expectation where, our exchange customers are not just servicing brokers and institutions that are now rapidly coming into the space. They're also having to deal with 1 million, click and trade type users on their websites, which is a different type of scaling challenge.
Yeah, it's a different beast entirely. The definition of an exchange in the crypto space, a little bit more loose, a little bit more fluid than it is in, let's say, a more traditional regulated market. We'll come back to that in a second. But I'm curious, Igor, one of the big challenges in launching any exchange in any product, I don't care what it is in actually developing what you're just referring to, developing that order flow, that liquidity on that platform. I'm curious from the ALPHAPOINT perspective, how involved, if at all, are you in that process? Or does some exchange come to you and they license your technology, your matching engine, then it's pretty much up to them to build the liquidity on that platform?
You're spot on. Liquidity is huge, and liquidity also begets liquidity. Nobody likes to come into a grocery store with empty shelves, right? You have to have bids and offers at an exchange to really have product on the shelf. So early on at ALPHAPOINT, we actually developed a tool that we call the remarketer, and this remarketer is effectively a software product that enables our customers to automate market making on their exchanges and kickstart that liquidity requirement that you're talking about. And effectively, what the remarketer does is it allows the customers to have a cloning order book type process where they have accounts at various counterparties. It can be liquidity providers. It can be other large exchanges. We have connections to dozens of liquidity providers and global exchanges out there. And it will effectively bring over that market data and hedge automatically those prices with markups or marks downs. So we really solved that liquidity problem initially with software. And then customers always bring their own market makers, their own liquidity providers to the table with various connectivity options. It can be, direct to the matching engine, fixed connection through the OMS, a variety of ways that liquidity providers and market makers can connect. So we service many of those as well.
Interesting. So they're not just up to their own devices. They come to you, they license your software, and there is some support in there to help them build out that liquidity from the get-go, Igor.
100%. And we have seen that it is still challenging. There are many issues within liquidity is very fragmented, particular for certain coins and certain pairs. So we are actually starting to step in, and we have a new entity that will be providing liquidity solutions as a service, as well as the software component of the business. But yes, we've been happy to help those customers kickstart liquidity from day one every time.
Let's get into that exchange market, because it's been a fascinating part of the crypto space to watch. When we were first leading up to, and indeed in the early days of launching this program, that market was really hot and heavy. It seemed like there was a new crypto exchange, particularly for our focus on the derivative side, launching just about every month out there. It was hard to keep up with them. We had stacks of cards on our desks and stacks of people coming through the studio. Back in the days when we had in-person guests, of every one of them seemed like they were launching a new crypto derivatives exchange. So we've seen, as you might expect, some consolidation in that space, but catch our audience up now that we're in this hot and heavy year of 2021. Crypto is the hottest asset class on the planet out there right now. What is the state of the crypto exchange market? Are you starting to see another boom in that space? Are you starting to see new entities come along and launch in the crypto exchange space? Or is it more of the consolidation some folks expected a few years back?
I think a bit of both has happened. There's definitely been consolidation, certainly through crypto winter. Now with the price and the activity and the revenues, you can see the posted revenues of Coinbase and others. It's an exciting opportunity. It's an area where a slice of the pie is a meaningful business. So we definitely have seen a pickup in the amount of inquiries for customers that want to launch crypto exchanges or brokerages around the world. What we've seen that's a bit different from last time. The last cycle was really driven in large part by ICOs and new tokens and new marketplaces for those types of tokens. Now we're seeing large institutions coming, looking to get a piece of the action as well. And many of these same institutions, including the folks in the capital markets that had been looking in 2017, 2018 before crypto winter, are back at the table thinking about how are we going to enter the space. There's also a lot more regulatory clarity, both regionally and globally, as far as what is the right way to get licensed. There's been time for governments to get their act together of having their digital currency licenses and a regime that entrepreneurs and large financial institutions alike can follow. And that has opened the door for institutional players to start providing a pivotal component of the space is institutional custody, right? And Fidelity and Bank of New York Mellon and Nomura launching crypto custody services is huge. It's what enables large institutions and endowments and insurance funds to actually make bets in the space by having a custodian that they can trust. So with all these pieces now in place, the regulatory piece, the custody piece, and a booming market, we're seeing very large financial institutions coming back to the table, looking at how are they going to provide access to this asset class to their customers, because they don't want their customers to open up an account at Binance or Coinbase or somewhere else. They want their customers to keep engaged within their ecosystem, and they're searching the market of how to do that.
Interesting. Of course, that's been a talking point for this show since it launched over 100 episodes ago. Now, it seems like it's still a new show to me, but it's been going for over 2 years now. Is what's going on the institutional side of the space? Are they ebbing? Are they flowing? It sounds like from your data there, Igor, and from what you're seeing on the crypto exchange front, that the institutions are back in a big way in crypto, sir.
100%. I think all those elements that I mentioned, the regulatory clarity, the institutional custody products, and the booming market are really bringing institutions back to the table. You also have the macroeconomic events that have been discussed at length on your show with the rising debt and the stimulus pouring in. So there are other factors that are causing the buy side, corporate treasuries and the like, to want access to the asset class. So it's really triggering capital markets players that didn't have as much demand before to provide a service to now get their act together, provide the service to their customers.
Getting back to that crypto exchange side of the space for a second, you touched on it earlier, the nuances that are going on in the crypto exchange space versus a traditional asset class, a traditional marketplace, where the function of exchange is very clear, it's very defined, it's heavily regulated, which is an exchange is the place where people come to source liquidity. And that's it. The exchanges aren't going out and attracting customers. They're not effectively acting as a broker. But in the crypto space, we've seen those lines very much blur. You mentioned Coinbase, they're going to go public very soon. That'll certainly be interesting to see what impact that has on demand for new crypto exchanges. I imagine your phone's going to be ringing off the hook after that IPO there, Igor. But interestingly enough, to watch this evolution of this space where we have these effectively what are retail brokers masquerading as exchanges and then calling themselves exchanges. Do you think eventually this marketplace will evolve and mature past that, and we'll see exchanges actually focusing on their core function of sourcing and providing liquidity, and maybe spinning off or outsourcing that customer acquisition function, that brokerage function, to actual brokers sometime down the road, Igor?
I think that's already happening in certain regards. I think some are starting to pivot to be more of a liquidity wholesaler versus a liquidity distributor. I think it's difficult to predict, though. I think crypto and crypto exchanges have opened a different type of player. Certainly, there are certain regions that regulatory oversight will come in and potentially separate some of the functions. But I believe that there has been a new way of approaching it that's going to, at least in certain regions, stay. And ultimately, some exchanges that are out in the market, they do act very much like brokers, and they're not focused as much as the liquidity provisioning as just matching services and providing liquidity with a few market makers versus having just market makers really provide this really, really deep book. So it depends on the region, it depends on the customer. But in certain regions, that regulatory distinction is quite clear. In Thailand, they have 3 different crypto licenses. They have a digital asset exchange license. They have a digital broker license. They have a security token offering license, right? We power customers that have each of those licenses in Thailand. So we understand the differences quite well. And many times it's just a different operational model, potentially some technology differences of how they operate.
Speaking of those tech differences and the different demands that are going on out there, you're obviously interacting with a bunch of different exchanges across the globe right now in the crypto ecosystem. What are some of the hot features? What's in demand? I mean, we talked about helping to source liquidity. I have to imagine that's a pretty popular feature right now. But outside of that, what are some of the hot services, the hot functions that people are coming to you as they're white labeling their software and saying, we really need X or we really need Y right now, Igor?
So I think that what we're seeing in the market there are two paths that we see exchanges taking as far as what they're going to be when they grow up, and what that market's what kind of customers are they trying to attract. Number one is the liquidity wholesaler, as I mentioned, is really that capital markets type, finding liquidity, matching orders, scale and uptime on that component. The other that's more focused on retail, we're seeing start to migrate towards being like small crypto banks that provide financial services similar to what a small regional bank might provide. So it's not just access to the asset of buying and selling crypto and different assets, but also services such as lending and borrowing, right? And we've seen an explosion of services both in DeFi and CeFi for this function of earning yield on your crypto or stable coin or dollars that you have sitting, or potentially borrowing against crypto collateral that you have on the account. So we released a yield feature last year, and we have several customers rolling that out and active with that in the market. And then there are other services, credit card services, both on the payment for acquisition of crypto as well as spending your crypto with a credit card, making that fluid. Payment processing is a very common type of request, similar to a Coinbase Commerce or a BTC Pay, of just, enabling the exchanges, enabling their regional merchants to accept crypto and creating that ecosystem that can function with crypto. But I think that will continue to expand to normal services that your local bank would provide.
What about products? Obviously, everyone's got Bitcoin on the brain right now, so let's leave Bitcoin aside for a moment. But there are obviously a legion of hot products in the altcoin universe. I'm sure many of the new exchanges that are spinning up and coming to license your software are focusing on that portion of the market. Where is the demand? Where are the hot products that these exchanges are coming to you looking to trade these days, Igor?
Yeah, there's always new blockchain products. That's one of the things that's incredibly exciting about this space. There's, you don't know which product is going to gain steam and grow rapidly. So our customers list thousands of tokens, have, thousands of markets for various types of assets. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, those are still the huge ones. You had Dogecoin, definitely a moment in the sun there. When Elon and company were speaking about that, and we definitely saw explosion on certain exchanges.
How many calls did you get to spin up Dogecoin exchanges after that announcement there, Igor?
Yeah, no, it's less, spinning up Dogecoin versus just, hey, let's add this asset. There's demand for it, right? So the area that we're pretty excited about, though, is other types of digital assets and demand. There's a lot of talk last year and the last 2 years around tokenization of assets. And we now see the proliferation of those types of markets really coming into fruition. Real estate tokenized, or, IP rights tokenized, art. Some of that's happening with NFTs. And some of that is definitely happening with centralized exchanges in different regions. So we've signed several customers just this year with those types of use cases, which we're very excited about.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned NFTs. They're all the rage over the course of the last week. I have to imagine your phone's been ringing off the hook of late with questions and the ability to add NFTs to these existing exchange infrastructures. Are those the calls you're receiving now?
Yeah, there's definitely interest. There's definitely demand. There are plenty of great places to acquire and sell and trade NFTs. And many of those are decentralized. We currently are not playing in that space. We do have technology that can accept an NFT, as a deposit or as a withdrawal. But we like to focus, at least for now, assets that are traded frequently, in high demand, and providing the liquidity and trading functions around those. That's really our bread and butter. But we're certainly evaluating where we could help if we can in that space as well.
Well, you mentioned some of the other markets where your technology is at work right now. You mentioned real estate. Where are some of the other marketplaces and areas where you're applying your technology outside of the core crypto marketplace, Igor?
Yeah, we have some exciting announcements that'll be coming up around music and media type asset classes. There's art is definitely one that's been around. There's several, and we're looking forward to making some announcements about those soon.
Well, speaking of things coming up soon, we like to leave our audience wanting more. Before we roll out of the crypto hot seat, any other hints, any other teases you want to leave with our audience of what they can expect from you and the ALPHAPOINT team? Now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think one area that we've been, very focused, as I mentioned earlier, is around yields, and we've always been thinking about how, we love this space. We love the decentralized nature of the space. We'll be looking to add some DeFi interconnectivity with the platform as well. And I think that's going to be very exciting to, millions of end users that may get access to that, where currently DeFi is a bit too far for your regular retail user to access. And we're going to simplify that process for them.
Sounds fascinating. And Igor, if folks want to check out your platform for themselves, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, so to check out and learn more about ALPHAPOINT, just go to alphapoint.com. Many of our customers are listed there as well. There are case studies around how our customers have launched leading exchanges around the world, which you can find in the case study section. And we're happy to hear from you.
Well, Igor, I'm glad you could join us today to break down some of the interesting new developments over there at ALPHAPOINT, and we'll pay attention to how all of them unfold in the marketplace in the coming months.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, now we have to keep on rolling. It is time, listeners, for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do exactly that. We break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, I'm talking about the big dog, Bitcoin. A decent week out there for Bitcoin, perhaps not as strong as some of the other cryptocurrencies out there, but a decent week nonetheless. Coming into showtime, we had Bitcoin just shy of the 59,000 level, about 58,987 or so, puts it up about 1,251 handles from our last show. So a good run after kind of languishing for a little while, getting a nice little bit of an upswing there. Not so much of a change this week from last week from an overall vol perspective. Remember, we've been talking for a while now how Bitcoin vol has kind of fallen into this mid to low 70s range, which is ironically where it was when we launched the show 2+ years ago. And it's still pretty much there, listeners. It hasn't budged. In fact, it was almost 72 in our last show, 71, 75. And then coming into today's show is at a 71%. So not a lot of change in the vol out there. Something we've been watching, we've been speculating, maybe that won't last forever. But again, it is possible, it's hard to think of summer already, but we are kind of getting there. Maybe crypto will have a bit of the summer doldrums, like we see in some of the other major asset classes where vol will kind of languish for a while, even though it's hard to think of Bitcoin vol getting too low for too long. It does have these moments. We have another Musk on the horizon, whatever it may be, to kick things into high gear. So I can't imagine it's going to be in the low 70s for too long. But again, we've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, and so far at least not a heck of a lot of movement there. 30-20 SKEW, same deal. Not much movement. It was about 4.15 on our last show, 4.05 this week. So not a heck of a lot lighting it up out there from a vol and a SKEW perspective. Let's check out on the hourly open interest. Maybe a little bit of a change there. And actually not a lot either. Remember on our last show, March had just rolled off the board. So we were waiting for that OI to come back in, and it came in a little bit this week. We had 165,000 contracts open last show. This week, 173,000. So a whopping 8,000 increase since our last show. Got a little higher in between episodes, but of course, some of the weeklies rolled off the board and took some OI with it. So net, not a heck of a lot of gain since our last show. Looking at it from a notional perspective, how much actual value is open in the options out there. Last show, it was right around 10 billion. Again, that's aggregated across all the major venues out there. Coming into today's show, about a billion more, about 11 billion on the tape, with DEREBIT still the big dog at about 10 billion. Then we've got number 2 out there, BAKKT, actually 431 million. And then LedgerX and OKEX keep fighting it out for third. LedgerX taking it this week with 328 million, followed by number 4, OKEX, 307 million. CME bringing up the rear there, 232 million. Actually, technically, Huobi is there with 1 million, but we'll leave them off for now, really. For the things north of a couple of $100 million, CME is kind of bringing up the rear there, which, again, if you're listening to our TWIFO program, it's not news to you. The options not really lighting the world on fire. We'll see if these new micro-sized underlying contracts, hopefully that'll kick into high gear and we'll get some options on those, and that might be really what things need to take it to the next level. In terms of outstanding OI, remember we said on our last show, puts were kind of catching up. They were kind of getting neck and neck with the calls coming into today's show. That's still pretty much the case. Calls have gained a little bit of room this time, a little bit of breathing room out there. There's about 92,000 calls open. That's about 6,000 more than last show, and about 83,000 puts. That's only up about 1,000. So calls net gaining about 5,000 over the puts from last week. Going on out there to the volume front, it was, again, kind of a fairly average week for the modern post-Musk Bitcoin world out there. The most active day of the week was last Friday, about $1 billion worth of notional volume changing hands on Friday. Outside of that, not a heck of a lot really going up out there. And that, of course, is much less than we've seen just on the 24th, just a few weeks ago. We had 2 billion going up over there. We've had multiple days north of a billion, 1.4 billion on the 11th, 1.2 billion on the 10th. So 1.6, 1.7 billion on the 17th and 19th of February, respectively. So there have been many days of late where we've been well north of $1 billion worth of notional. So just barely eking out $1 billion one day over the course of the last week doesn't really qualify as super active these days. Going on out to the open interest, where the action really is right now from a crypto, indeed Bitcoin options perspective. It's all April right now, about 48,000 contracts open in April. It's up about 6,400 from our last show. And again, kind of a bit of a contrast from some of the other assets we talk about here, where they tend to aggregate their liquidity around the quarterlies. So far, at least, it's front month, which is kind of interesting. April doing a fair bit more than the next closest contract, which is June. Not to say June has nothing open. June has looks like about 37,000 open. So it's a fair number too, but April right now, at least, still maintaining the lead. And of course, if you add in some of the weeklies, that number grows even more for April. So interesting to see that April coming on pretty strong there. In terms of where that options OI falls by strike, what are the size positions open in Bitcoin options right now? Well, the 40,000 strike's kind of been the big dog for a while, and it continues to be the big dog this week with 16,000. Not a lot of change really in most of these strikes outside of one. They've all kind of moved up or down a couple of hundred contracts really. So like for the 40,000 strike, gained about 500 contracts this week. Not a heck of a lot. It's still number one with about 16,000. Number two is the 50,000 strike with about 11,000. That's up about 600 as well. So again, not huge volume numbers this week. Number three, though, is the 80,000 strike. That's interesting. That's up about 1,100 contracts. That has jumped up from about, I think, number 5 recently, all the way up to number 3. So more paper opening on the 80,000 strike. I look forward to all the slew of articles that's going to come out after the show talking about all the upside interest in crypto options out there. But the 80,000 strike is starting to come on the radar in a much more demonstrable perspective. Number 4 is the 48,000 strike with about 10,000. That's down a couple of hundred from last show. And rounding out the top 5, we've got the 64,000 strike with 8,600. That's kind of a newcomer on the list there. So interesting, again, at to slightly in the money, and then some far out of the money strikes here. Yeah, it's just fascinating stuff open here. I guess what makes the crypto space so fascinating, listeners, is the just plethora of strikes that are capturing the imagination out there right now, even though a lot of it is far out of the money, along with some, shall we say, decently in the money strikes as well. Going out to the CME front, like we said, not a lot lighting it up here these days on the options front. The biggest day last week was Tuesday with 69 contracts. The rest of the week was much less than that. Futures, same deal. Not a heck of a lot on the tape last week. Friday, obviously, not much going on at all. Thursday, 4,600 contracts. Wednesday, 7,500. Tuesday, 5,000. Monday, 8,400. So your typical holiday week out there in the futures front. Not a lot of action out there. The backed volume bot, similar numbers out there. They did about 1,047 contracts. It's actually up 28%, so maybe little bit of a sign of life out there on the back front, even though yet again, zero OI from a Bitcoin options perspective. Let's move beyond Bitcoin now, though. It's time to head into the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, a portion of the show we break down the top 10 assets from a market cap perspective and look at some of the top altcoin out there. Number 10 in the top 10 this week, Chainlink. $31, almost $32 out there, and that was worth $13.3 billion from a market cap perspective. Remember, take the market caps out here. Bit of a tasty grain of salt. Number 9, Litecoin at about $14.5 billion. Number 8, Uniswap, $16.1 billion. Number 7, XRP. That might be lower than you might think given the action we've seen out there of late, but that XRP at about $38 billion for market cap right now. Good week for XRP. We'll get into that in a little bit. Number 6, Cardano, 38, almost 39 billion. Number 5, Polkadot, breaking into the top half of the top 10 now here with about a little north of 40 billion of market cap. Number 4, Tether, 42.4 billion. Number 3, Binance Coin at a 57.8 billion. Number 2, it's ETH, 244 billion. And number 1, the big dog, Bitcoin, 1.1 trillion. Still hard to say that with a straight face, listeners. If you were just joking about not too long ago on the show, will it make 1 trillion? Most of our listeners guessed Tesla would get there first from a market cap perspective. But no, even though those two names are kind of joined at the hip these days. Getting on out to the number 2 crypto asset out there, talking ETH. A good week for ETH and for the ETH heads out there. Up about 280.5 points from our last show. Coming into showtime, we had ETH a little bit north of the 2,000 level, 2107. It got up to a new all-time high in between this show and our last show, got up to 2144. So a good run, good time out there for ETH, and a far cry from when we saw some crosses going up just a few weeks ago on some of the major exchanges, I think including Kraken, for 700 and change out there. So there was some aggressive liquidation going on. You have to feel for those folks who were forced to liquidate at 700 and change when it's at 2144 right now. Coming into showtime, vol a little bit more active than we saw out there in the Bitcoin space. The last show we had 81% from an ETH vol perspective. Coming into today's show, 86. So vol ticking up a little bit out there on the ETH front. SKEW, same deal, bit of some action out there. 8.8 on our last show. Coming into today's show, 15.6, so nearly doubling out there, which again reflects some of that aggressive movement we've seen out there in the underlying since our last show. Volume-wise, also a pretty decent volume week. We saw some big days out there. The biggest day was last Friday, with 320 million worth of notional going up, followed by Thursday with a 204 million. So neither of those are records. And when we saw almost 400 million going up on the 23rd of February, remember that was a pretty active day across the board, listeners. So not quite at those levels, but still pretty aggressive numbers this week. And certainly for a holiday week, pretty decent numbers. From an OI perspective, let's see what's been going on. Decent new additions to the OI out here on the ETH front. Calls are at about 730,000 contracts. Coming into showtime, it's up 54,000 from last show. And the puts, 526,000, up about 69,000 from our last show. Looking at the overall hourly OI listeners, last show is about 1.1 million. Today, coming into showtime, about 1.24 million out there. Again, if you look at this chart there, you see the huge gulf of where March fell off the board. We're not quite back to those levels yet, but give it some time. We'll see how the OI builds back up. If you're wondering how much notional value is really outstanding out there in ETH options, it's up about $1 billion from last week. There was about $2 billion open last week and about $3 billion open this week. Once again, DEREBIT kind of taking up all the oxygen in the room. It's at about $3 billion itself right now, with the rest kind of at rounding errors. The biggest platform outside of DEREBIT is OKEX with about 130 million worth of notional outstanding. In terms of where the action is from a monthly expiration perspective right now, ETH tends to like a quarterly a little bit more than Bitcoin does, and we're seeing that reflected right now. June is the number 1 size monthly position out there with 346,000 contracts open. It's up about 22,000 from our last show. We got April number 2, just shy of 250,000 contracts, and then back out to the quarterlies, back out to D's for number 3 with 225,000. So ETH continues to like itself some quarterlies. In terms of strikes, we've been talking for a while about some of these weird, far, far deep in the money strikes in ETH, and they're still open. That's still the case this week. The number one, though, it's a little bit more relevant strike. It's the 1600 strike, and that one has ticked up some more since our last show. There's about 73,000 contracts open on the 1600 strike. That's up about 11,000 from last show. Of course, in and of itself, that strike is pretty far in the money now, but certainly far more relevant than the 320 strike, which is our number 2 strike, which has 62,500 contracts, up about 500 from last show. The 400 strike, number 3, with 61,500, again, up about 500. And the number 4 strike out there in terms of the big sizable positions in ETH options right now, the 480 strike, with 51,300, up about a couple of hundred there as well. So not a huge OI change week outside of the number 1 strike out there. Those deep in the money strikes are still open and don't show any signs of changing anytime soon. What has been changing of late, though, is the good run out there in some of the other altcoin out there, in particular XRP. XRP has hit some interesting new levels out there. Coming into today's show, it was at about north of 80 cents, almost 82 cents. That's an impressive run from our last show, listeners, when it was 56 cents. You know, if you've been following along with XRP of late, it's had some struggles when it got up to near these levels in the past. You saw it get up to around 75 cents about a month and change ago, and then it got clipped very aggressively as some sellers came in and took it right back down to the 60-cent level, then right back down again after that to the 40-odd cent level. And it's kind of been languishing in that 40-cent realm for quite some time. But it looks like maybe some of those days are behind it. We're seeing XRP now pretty much getting back the losses that it's had as this SEC lawsuit has kind of been hanging over its head for the better part of this year, at least so far. And so interesting times here. Got up to 72 cents and then beyond over the course of last week, and now obviously rallying again coming into today's show up to about 82 cents. This is, of course, moving in lockstep with what we're seeing out there on the ETH front, where ETH getting up to that new all-time high we mentioned of 2144. Seems like it's carrying some of the other altcoin with it, including indeed XRP. So is this the moment? Is this the breakout moment for XRP that a lot of people have been waiting for ages? It's certainly not the breakout to $3 and change like we saw back in the day, but will it be able to hold this value? So far, it's been able to maintain north of 70 for a while now. So that's a good sign. It hasn't gotten clipped right back down to 50-odd or 40-odd cents. So this might be, perhaps, this is the moment the XRP bulls have been waiting for. And Dogecoin also getting a bit of a lift. Pretty much most things up since our last show. Dogecoin up a whopping 0.003681 since our last show. Now let's round it out, a little bit of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Questions, a portion of the show where you folks take the reins, your questions, your comments. First up, we got Chi-Town. I wonder where he lives, or perhaps she. Wants to know, do you think this recent rally in XRP will lead to more XRP options trading? You know, it's an interesting question. People have been asking us this almost since we started this show. People really want options in XRP. The challenge with options in XRP is kind of what I just mentioned earlier, talking about the price action. It's moved up quite a bit, but it still is about 80 cents. And it's kind of hard to have an option on an underlying that is 80 cents. I mean, most people in the traditional options world look a bit askance at options on stocks, let's say, below $5. Some go below $10. They don't want to touch an option. They think the stock itself at that point is an option. So if you're getting below $1, most traditional options traders don't really want it. They see the underlying still as an option. And it's a pretty low cost flyer, even at these lofty levels right now for XRP. So right now, I don't think Chi-Town we're going to see an explosion in ETH options. We have heard people come on the show in the past talking about how they're trying to source OTC volume in XRP options. That's where still the lion's share of the paper is going up. So this bump will certainly, I'm sure, boost some of that OTC paper. Will it lead to a flood of volume and listings? What are you going to do? You can't list the half strike. List the one strike. I mean, there's not many strike choices out there even. So it's nice. It's nice to think of this robust XRP options market, and hopefully someday we'll see that. But I don't think this move, even though it has been aggressive, is to 80 odd cents is going to be the one to do it here, Chi-Town. But I'm with you. I hope to see more XRP. Someday we can break down all the SKEW and the action and the vol out there in XRP as well. I look forward to that day with you there, Chi-Town. Here's another question coming in from Goose. What do you think about what Mark Cuban said about the cryptos? Do you agree with his thoughts on Bitcoin and ETH? He came on another podcast recently and said his portfolio allocation is broken down as 60% Bitcoin, 30% ETH, and 10% the rest. So does he view traditional stocks maybe as the rest? I wonder what the rest is. He called Bitcoin a better alternative to gold, and it's going to continue to be. That's why I own Bitcoin and why I never sold it. He's bullish on Bitcoin, believes in ETH as well as a real game changer. ETH, on the other hand, in Cuban's opinion, is the closest crypto asset to being a currency. ETH smart contracts, DeFi, and NFTs were a game changer. Let's see, NFT royalties, talks about that a little bit as well. Yeah, Mark Cuban's never been shy from inserting himself into any conversation, which will get him a little bit of hype, a little bit of publicity. So I kind of take his comments on any of this kind of stuff with a bit of a grain of salt. He could be a big proponent of crypto, and if that's the case, the folks in the crypto space will certainly welcome him with open arms. If he is indeed holding 60% of his holdings in Bitcoin right now, that's a highly volatile asset class to have 60% of your portfolio in right now. So hopefully he's doing what he did with his broadcast.com deal way back in the day, which is what made him, is, of course, he hedged it because it was a deal, I believe it was with Yahoo at the time, and Yahoo, of course, imploded shortly thereafter. He hedged that Yahoo stock he bought. So getting back to our options wherewithal, that's the one thing that kind of saved Mark Cuban. He, or probably more likely his asset manager, had the savvy to buy some put options on Yahoo, and that ended up saving his bacon. Hopefully he's got some asset hedging going on out here in the crypto space as well. Otherwise, to have 60% of your portfolio subject to that much volatility, that could be a lot. But hey, if he's a big fan of all things crypto, more power to him. All right, listeners, that music come to the end of another epic journey through the world of all things crypto. I want to thank my guest, IGOR TELYATNIKOV, the co-founder and CEO over there at ALPHAPOINT. Check them out over there if you're interested in the crypto exchange space, and a lot of things going on over there. Check them out over there at ALPHAPOINT. You can give them a follow on the old Twitters as well, at ALPHAPOINT Live is their handle over there on Twitter. Of course, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live, for sending in your questions. Keep them coming. Remember, Interview Tuesday coming up tomorrow here on the network, followed by Education Wednesday. You got Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio, two shows that are perfect for the audience of this program, who is traditionally a little bit more new to the world of options. Those shows will help hold your hand, explain some of these concepts we're talking about here, like SKEW and volatility and open interest in a lot more detail. And I'm not intimidating at all ways. Check them out on Education Wednesday. Thursday, got the option block, and This Week in Futures Options. Friday, volatility views. And we kick it all off again on Monday with another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.